The alarm was screaming through the entire mall. People were running in every direction, but David was not moving. He was standing completely still in the middle of the lobby, positioned between a young woman and the mall manager, who was pointing at her like she was a criminal. David stepped forward and looked the woman in the eyes. "Hey, I am right here. Nobody is going to touch you. You hear me?" The woman looked back at him. She was maybe 24 years old, natural hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing a simple blue dress that had been ironed carefully but was starting to show its age at the edges. Even in the middle of all this chaos, even with her hands trembling slightly at her sides, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that stopped David completely. Her name was Zara. "I did not steal anything," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with something between exhaustion and humiliation. "I was returning a dress. I have the receipt. He will not let me speak." A crumpled receipt fell from her shaking hand and landed on the floor between them. Before David could respond, Mr. Boateng came pushing through the crowd. He was the mall manager. Expensive suit, loud voice, the kind of man who had decided long ago that his position gave him the right to treat people however he wanted. "That woman walked out of the store with merchandise. I saw it myself. Somebody call the police right now." David stood up straight. He turned around slowly and faced Boateng. Then he did something he had not done in 6 months. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his real phone, not the cheap basic phone he had been using since he started this job. His real phone, the one with one number saved in it. He pressed call. The crowd went quiet. David spoke calmly into the phone. "Dad, I need you at Meridian Mall right now. Bring the lawyers." Boateng stared at him. Something about the way David said it made him go very still. "Who are you calling?" Boateng asked slowly. David looked at him directly. "My father, Kwame Asante Cole, the man whose company owns this building, this mall, and everything inside it, including the chair you sit in every morning." The color left Boateng's face completely. Zara looked at David. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, more like the moment when you have been holding your breath for a very long time and someone finally tells you it is safe to breathe. But to understand how David ended up standing in a security guard uniform defending a woman he had only known for a few months in the middle of a Lagos shopping mall, you have to go back to the beginning. Back 6 months. Back to a penthouse in Accra where a young man had everything and understood almost none of it. David Asante Cole was 26 years old. He had grown up insulated from everything difficult. Private schools, international travel, business class flights, a chef who prepared his meals every morning. His father, Kwame Asante Cole, had built one of the largest business empires in West Africa from nothing. Hotels, shopping malls, real estate across 5 countries, construction companies that employed thousands of people. David was the only son, the heir to all of it, and he had spent 26 years treating that fact like background noise. One morning, Kwame walked into the living room and found David on the couch with his phone, while breakfast sat cooling on the kitchen counter. "You missed the board meeting again," Kwame said. "I sent my notes," David replied. "Your notes." Kwame stood there quietly for a moment. "David, one day this company feeds thousands of families. Thousands of people sleep under roofs and send their children to school because of what we built. And you treat it like it belongs to someone else." David looked up. "Dad, I am 26. I have time." Kwame did not raise his voice. He never did. He walked to the counter and slid a manila envelope across to his son. David opened it. Inside was an employment contract, a fake ID, and a staff handbook for Meridian Mall in Lagos. "You are going to work there," Kwame said. "Security guard, entry level, minimum wage, staff quarters, fake name, no credit cards, no connections, and one emergency phone that you do not touch unless someone is dying." David laughed. "You cannot be serious." "I am always serious about character," Kwame said. "You cannot lead people you have never stood beside." 3 days later, David was at the employee entrance of Meridian Mall, wearing a uniform that did not fit properly, with a name badge that read Daniel. His supervisor was Sergeant Mensah, a solid, no-nonsense man with a loud laugh and eyes that missed nothing. "Daniel, where are you from?" "Accra." "Accra boys." Mensah shook his head with a smile and slapped David on the back. "You will learn. Come."
David was posted to the East Wing, the forgotten side of the mall, near the loading docks, the back stairwells, the staff canteen. No glamour, no air conditioning, just work. He stood at his post that first week and paid attention for the first time in his life. He watched things he had always walked past without seeing. A cleaner mopping the same corridor for the fourth time because a pipe was leaking and nobody had called maintenance. A shop assistant crying quietly in the stairwell on her lunch break. A security guard sharing his meal with a younger colleague who admitted quietly that he had not eaten since the day before. David stood in his too big uniform and felt the world rearrange itself slightly around him. It was a Tuesday afternoon in his third week when he first saw her. Zara was sitting on a bench near the East Wing entrance with a stack of papers on her lap and a laptop bag at her feet, typing furiously. She was not shopping, she was not waiting for anyone. She was walking, right there on a mall bench, completely focused, completely in her own world. David slowed down as he walked his patrol route past her. She looked up. He kept walking. The next day, she was there again. Same bench, same focus, different papers. On the third day, he stopped. "You are here every day," he said. She looked up at him with an expression that was not unfriendly, but was not particularly interested in small talk either. "The Wi-Fi here is stronger than at my apartment," she said simply. Then she went back to typing. David stood there for a moment. Then he smiled to himself and walked on.
Over the following weeks, something gradual happened, the kind of thing that does not announce itself. He would pass her bench on his patrol and slow down. She would look up. Sometimes they said nothing, sometimes a few words. Then one afternoon, he came back from the canteen with 2 cups of tea and held one out to her without explaining himself. She looked at the cup, then at him. "I did not ask for this," she said. "I know," he said. She took it anyway. Her name was Zara Mensah, no relation to his supervisor. She was 24 years old. She had a degree in architecture from the University of Lagos. She had been trying for 2 years to get her small design firm off the ground. She did freelance drafting work to pay rent. She came to the mall because the Wi-Fi was free and the bench was quiet and it was air-conditioned. "You are a security guard who brings people tea they did not ask for," she said one afternoon. "That is unusual." "I am an unusual security guard," he said. She looked at him for a moment like she was trying to figure out what exactly she was looking at. Then she went back to her screen. What Zara did not know was anything about who David actually was. What David did not know yet was that Zara's father had worked as a site architect on one of Kwame Asante Cole's construction projects years earlier. There had been a contract dispute. Her father's small firm had done the design work and was never properly paid. The case was dropped when her father got sick. He passed away 2 years ago, leaving Zara with his unfinished business, his debts, and his dream of building something that mattered. Zara did not talk about any of this for a long time, but slowly, sitting on that bench in the East Wing of a mall in Lagos, she started to. "Why architecture?" David asked one evening as she was packing up her things. She paused. "My father was an architect, not a famous one, not a rich one, but he could look at an empty piece of land and describe what it would become so clearly that you could almost see it standing there already." She zipped her bag. "I want to be able to do that. Can you?" She smiled for the first time. Not a polite smile, a real one that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth. "Yes," she said. "I just need someone to give me the chance." David looked at her and felt something he had no experience with. Not attraction exactly, though that was there too. Something more like recognition, like seeing someone clearly for the first time and understanding that they are more than what their circumstances are currently allowing them to be. Sergeant Mensah noticed, the way Mensah noticed everything. "Sir, the young woman on the East Wing bench," Mensah said one evening without looking up from his clipboard. "What about her?" David said. "I am being thorough on my patrol." Mensah looked up. "Daniel." He said the fake name carefully, the way people say a word when they suspect it is not the real one. "Whatever you are doing, be honest about it. Women who are working that hard for their dreams do not have time for people who are not serious." David said nothing. "I am not saying do not pursue it," Mensah added. "I am saying be real, whatever that means for you." Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Zara had gone into one of the clothing stores on the East Wing to return a dress she had bought the previous week for a client presentation. She had the receipt, she had the tags, she had everything she needed. But the store attendant called Boateng, and Boateng, who had been looking for a reason to have the woman he considered to be loitering removed from his mall for weeks, decided that today was the day he would make an example. David heard the commotion from his post and walked toward it. He saw the crowd forming first. Then he heard Boateng's voice, loud and certain, the way people are when they believe their position protects them from being wrong. Then he saw Zara, standing in the middle of it all, completely still.
not crying, not shouting, holding her receipt in one hand and her dignity in the other, while Boateng pointed at her and performed outrage for an audience of shoppers with their phones raised. David walked through the crowd without stopping. He stood beside her. He looked at Boateng. "She has a receipt," David said. "I'm not talking to you," Boateng snapped. "Get back to your post." "She has a receipt," David said again, which means there is no crime here, which means this ends now. Boateng stepped closer. "You are a security guard, a junior one. You do not speak to me like that. I will have you removed from this building today." David looked at him for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket. He pulled out the real phone. He made the call. 20 minutes later, the black cars arrived. Kwame Asante Cole walked through the front entrance of Meridian Mall, and the energy in the room shifted the way it always does when someone who has genuinely built something walks into a space. He saw David first, in the uniform, standing next to a young woman who was watching everything with careful eyes. Kwame looked at his son for a long moment. Then he looked at Boateng. "You harassed a customer who had a valid receipt," Kwame said quietly. Boateng opened his mouth. "Sir, I do not know your son was. My son being involved should not change how you treat people. It never should have happened in the first place." Kwame turned to his assistant. "Terminate his contract. Review every customer complaint filed against this management team in the last 2 years. I want it all on my desk." He turned back to David. They looked at each other in the way fathers and sons look at each other when something long hoped for has finally arrived. 6 months, Kwame said softly. "I expected 3 weeks." "I found reasons to stay," David said. Kwame looked at Zara then. Zara met his gaze steadily. She was not intimidated. She was not performing gratitude. She was simply herself, which was, David had come to understand, the most extraordinary thing about her. "What is your name?" Kwame asked. "Zara Mensah. I am an architect. I run a small design firm." She paused. "My father was also an architect. He did contract work for Asante Kole Industries about 7 years ago. There was a payment dispute. It was never resolved." The room was very quiet. Kwame's expression did not change, but something moved behind his eyes. The look of a man standing at the edge of something he had been avoiding for a long time. "I remember that file," he said quietly. "So do I. I grew up in the middle of it." Kwame went back through the records himself. He found the contracts. He found the dispute. He found where it had been dropped when Zara's father got sick and no longer had the energy to fight. He found the amount that was owed. He paid it, in full, with interest, to Zara directly. He also looked at her portfolio. Then he called her. "Your father's firm designed 3 buildings that we built and never credited him for," Kwame said. "I would like to commission your firm to design the new community center we are building in Lekki. Properly contracted, properly credited, properly paid." Zara was quiet on the phone for a long moment. "Why?" she said. "Because it is right," Kwame said simply, "and because my son has better judgment than I gave him credit for." David told Zara everything on a Wednesday evening, sitting on the same bench where they had first spoken. He told her about the penthouse, and the fake name, and the 6 months, and what his father had sent him to learn. She listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. "Were you ever going to tell me?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I just needed to be someone worth telling you first." She looked at him for a long time, the same careful look she gave everything, the look of a woman who had learned not to trust things that looked good before she understood what they were made of. "You brought me tea I did not ask for," she said finally. "I did. And you stood next to me when it would have been much easier to walk away." "Yes, that part," she said, "was not about your name or your father's company. No, it was not." She nodded slowly, not forgiving, not romantic, just honest. "I need time," she said. "I have time." The Asante Cole Family Fund launched its first community project 6 months later, the Emmanuel Mensah Community and Creative Arts Center in Lekki, named after Zara's father. The building was designed entirely by Zara's firm. Clean lines, open spaces, a structure that looked like it belonged to the community rather than being placed on top of it. At the opening, Kwame stood in the front row and looked at the building his company had built from a young woman's vision and felt something settle in him that had been restless for a long time. David stood beside Zara near the entrance as people filed in. He watched her watch the building, the way her eyes moved across every line and angle, checking, assessing, satisfied. Your father would have loved this, David said quietly. Zara breathed in slowly. I know, she said. She did not look at David when she said the next thing. She kept her eyes on the building. I stopped needing time. A while ago, actually. I just wanted to see if you would wait without being told to. David turned to look at her. And, he said. And you did, she said. She looked at him then, that real smile again, the one that started in her eyes. He reached out and she let him take her hand.
Zara Mensah's firm went on to become one of the most respected architectural practices in Lagos. She designed 11 community buildings across West Africa in the following decade. Every one of them was named after someone ordinary who had done something extraordinary. David Asanteko never went back to running things from a penthouse. He ran the foundation from an open office in Lagos with a window that looked out onto the street. He said watching people go about their real lives every morning was the most important meeting of his day. Kwame retired 2 years later and handed the company to his son. He said he was not worried anymore, and on a quiet Saturday, 2 years after a woman stood her ground in the middle of a shopping mall with a receipt in her hand and her dignity intact, David got down on one knee in the east wing of Meridian Mall, on the bench where it all began. Zara looked at him, then at the bench, then back at him. Here, she said. It seemed right, he said. She laughed, loud and real and unguarded. Then she said yes. You can have everything and still be empty. You can have nothing and still be full. The most important things in life do not come from what you are born into. They come from who you choose to be when nobody is watching. And sometimes, when you are finally brave enough to be that person, life sends you exactly who you are always supposed to find.